right, welcome back. Will Dance Show. We're joined now by one of Oklahoma's senators, Senator Jim Inhofe. He is a Army veteran, a world-renowned pilot, and a great conservative patriot. Good morning, Senator. Thank you for taking time out of your day.
Well, good morning, Will.
Well, we're excited to have you, sir. You know, we'll jump right in. You wrote a great op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal talking about infrastructure projects, and one of the things that voters, as you know, as you tour around our state, tell you is this gridlock of party lines. And in your op-ed piece, you talk about how this is a great thing for Democrats and Republicans to get behind because we desperately do need to revamp our infrastructure.
You know, there's no such thing as a Republican road or a Democrat bridge. And it's an interesting thing that you brought up this op-ed piece I did in the Wall Street Journal, because I had another person with me who is one of the most liberal Democrats, and we both agreed. We might remember that we passed the FAST Act last year, and that's something that it took a lot of bipartisan support. Very liberal Democrats joined me to get that done, and that's one of the things that we're supposed to be doing. There's an old document around there nobody reads anymore. It's called a Constitution, and that tells what we're supposed to be doing here. We're supposed to be, number one, defending America, and number two, infrastructure. They called them post roads back then, but it's something that we need, and the president has got that on the front burner, and I do chair the committee that deals with that, so we're going to be successful. I know there's a word getting out yesterday that we're not going to be able to get this done this year. I think we can still get it done this year. So you're right on target when you say there are some things that we're supposed to be doing that are not at all not partisan in any way. And, roads, highways, that's right at the top of the list.
We're joined by Senator Inhofe, one of Oklahoma's favorite sons. Senator, here's the big question, though. This is going to be expensive, and we are riddled with debt. We're riddled with still have deficits. How's the best way to pay for this?
Well, I'm going to give you an answer that not one other member of the 100 United States senators will give you, because they're afraid of the issue in spite of the fact that it's worked every time. Back in 1962, we had John Kennedy as a president. John Kennedy at that time said he wanted to have more federal revenues coming in for the Great Society programs, and his statement was, we need more revenue coming into the federal coffers so that we can get into these social programs. He said the best way to increase revenue is to lower the tax rates. Now, he did this, and you might remember reading about it. You're too young to remember this, but you certainly
am a student of history.
Yeah,
I am a student of history. So
I know you are, and so what he did was he took the top rate of 90%, brought it down to 70%, and moved everything else down proportionally. Now, it happened that he died the next year. But when the results came in, they increased revenue by 30%. Then in 1981, along came Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan said, that we've proved now that this will happen. So he took the tax rates, that 70% rate, and down to 50%, and all other rates comparably. And I know we're getting into the weeds here, but have people write this down because it's very important. The total amount of revenue that came in 1981 to run government was $469 billion. 2 years later, that was increased to $720 billion, all because he lowered tax rates. And when you lower tax rates, that increases the economic activity. Just give you an example. During the 8 years of Obama, we increased our economy by 1.5% each year, average. Now, this president's already got it well above 3%. And for each 1% increase, that develops about $3 trillion of new revenue over 10 years. I know it's a complicated thing, but that is where the money's going to come from. And everyone's afraid to go back in history and see that it could be done. So I'm not. I think the revenues are going to be there to do a real good bill. We did this, of course, with the FAST Act, it was called, last year, and it's very successful.
We're joined by Senator Inhofe, one of Oklahoma's senators. Senator, you're right about that. You see already the new tax plan that the president has rolled out. You've seen lots and lots of companies boosting revenue, giving out bonuses, and it does work because it allows that money to freely flow without getting bogged down in one other thing that you're big on is deregulation. Let's talk about that for a second.
That's huge. Now, there are two things. First of all, if you could kind of remind people, my website is inhofe.senate.gov. Now, the reason I give that out is because on both of these subjects, if they would access my website, you can pull out, for example, all of the companies doing business in Oklahoma that are giving out bonuses, and like American Airlines, for example, is $1,000 for each employee, and so it shows how much money is going to be developed from cutting taxes. But the other thing you can get is a list. I think the list is up to 71 now, 71 regulations that came in during the Obama years that we have either repealed or we're in the process of doing it. And these are things that are just over-regulation. And one reason the economy has rebounded in Oklahoma since Trump has been president is because he's gotten rid of a lot of these over-regulations. Just to give you an example, if you talk to any of the farmers groups, they'll tell you the most significant regulation to get rid of was the one that came in during the Obama years to change the regulation of water from the states to the federal government. Now, you get out into areas out far west of where you are right now, it's very arid, and yet if the federal government should take that over, the panhandle would be a wetland. You'd have another bureaucracy crawling all over you. Well, we did away with that, and that's the number one concern that farmers, not just in Oklahoma, but throughout America, had as their number one issue. You've got to get rid of the overregulation. That's what's, and we are doing that.
We're joined by Senator Inhofe for just a couple more minutes. Senator, I want to take you to your recent trip. You led a House and Senate delegation over to the South Pacific. You toured 12 different countries. That you're from an Army vet and a senior senator with a strong background in this. This is a different threat than most people understand, isn't it?
It is, Will. And yeah, I went, and these are not glorious places I went to, but I was in the Philippines, in Taiwan, South Korea, Tokyo, Guam, Okinawa. Now, these are places that everything I mentioned there has historically been a top ally of the United States. But the big problem that is the change that's taken place is the China is reemerged to try to take over our position as being the leader in that part of the world. Now, what they have done, without any authority to do it, without any ownership, they have taken over and started new islands. It's called reclamation. You reclaim out of the ocean islands and then start putting armaments on it. They're now up to 3,000 acres that they have built in the South China Sea, and on each one of them. In fact, you can again access I have pictures of this on my website. So these islands, they have armaments on as if they're going to go to war. Now, what's happened with this? All of these allies that we have had are now getting really wobbly and starting to fear China. And so that's the main reason I went over to document that this is all true, and it is, and we're going to have to do something about it, and we are doing something about it now by calling everyone's attention to the fact that China is doing this. It's illegal, and it's something that we can't sit back and do nothing. What this president is trying to do, and I don't mean this in a blatantly partisan position, but he's trying to reassert the presidency or America as the leader of the free world. And you know what I'm talking about, Will. You know what happened 9 years ago when Obama became president. First thing he did was start an apology tour all around the world and talking about how bad America was. And so allies that we've had, like the Ukraine, and they got so they no longer trusted us. Well, that same thing has happened in the South China Sea, and we got a real threat out there. Keep in mind that on November 28th, North Korea fired a rocket that had the range to reach Yukon, Oklahoma. Now, that's a scary thought, and those individuals who don't see that as a threat are saying, well, he didn't have a big payload on that, so he wouldn't have been able to do that with the payload. Well, that doesn't give me any comfort at all, because the fact that he can reach that it's a scary thing. I don't want to sound extreme, but I look back wistfully at the days of the Cold War when we had two superpowers. We knew what they had, Will. They knew what we had. and mutual assured destruction meant something. It doesn't mean anything anymore. So anyway, we got a threat. We had Obama just really downgraded our military. We're starting to build it back up now, and we'll actually have a hearing on that very thing that I'll be chairing this morning at 10 o'clock Eastern Time.
We're joined by Senator Inhofe. You can find out all the things he's doing for you, Oklahoma, by going to inhofe.senate.gov. Senator, to touch on that, it's interesting. When Donald Rumsfeld left as defense secretary, it was a very small blip on the radar, but he said, you better watch the rise of the Red Dragon. And Obama allowed them carte blanche ability to expand themselves in intelligence, cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, building these islands. And like you said, the North Korea-China threat is very real, sir.
It is, and I'm so appreciative that you're. I'm not blowing smoke at you, but you're very knowledgeable in this stuff, and so you have an audience who understands when we talk about the threat that's out there and that we're facing today. It's one unlike anything that we've been exposed to before. Our military, you talk to anyone who is with the Oklahoma 45th and was stationed overseas, when they get back, and they'll tell you what's happened to our military, and now we're repairing it. The Obama administration had a policy. They said, we can't put any money into military unless we put an equal amount into the social programs. Well, it shocks a lot of people, Will, when I remind them that back there from the 60s and on back before that, we historically have spent 50% of all of our revenues on defending America. That's now down to 15%. So we've got to rebuild our military, got to reassert our position as the leader of the free world, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, Senator Inhofe, thank you so much for being a patriot. Thank you for your service to this country as a veteran. And when you get home, I want to talk to you about that trip around the world that you flew in your plane. That had to be quite an event. You can find out more by going to inhofe.senate.gov. Senator, thank you. Keep up the good fight, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Will.
All right, Senator Inhofe, you can find, again, his website, inhofe.senate.gov.